Chris with Cold War Competitions, and I was going to show you something I learned using a Magpul CTR stock and one of the Magpul cheek risers. I used this Magpul CTR stock with my Mcree Precision chassis. I wanted something that was easily adjustable and adjustable to the point where I could mark it for different lengths, like if I was wearing a plate carrier, body armor, or just a uniform top. At first, I used the CTR, and it was just not obviously tall enough to use with an optic that's mounted on this type of chassis and this setup. So I found they make adjustable pieces that snap on to the CTR or the MOE stock, and this one happens to be the tallest. This one's a 3/4 inch. Even with that, the 3/4 inch, I found it was still not tall enough, and this type of plastic is slippery if it gets sweaty, wet. Even with if you have a beard, facial hair, it gets real slippery. So I made this using a Office Max mouse pad. Cost all about $5. The bottom of it is a real rubbery textured surface, so if you're sweaty or wet, your face sticks to it really well. Obviously, the other side's purple. We don't need to use that. But once I put this on, I got a good cheek weld. My face stays in spot. It's easy. If you're moving the rifle, your face doesn't slide around a whole bunch, and it's pretty cheap, and it's lasted quite a while. Now, what you need to do this, to build this, is obviously a Magpul CTR or MOE stock. Well, you could honestly use any stock if you wanted to add some texture to it or even some height. But in my case, I needed a 3/4 inch riser that snaps onto my CTR stock. You're going to need a piece of good heavy paper. This is heavier than just printer paper, and I'll show you why here in a minute, why that's more beneficial. A marker, obviously a mouse pad, and these are $5 or $6 at like Office Max or any office supply store. And for glue, I use 3M High Strength 90. This is incredibly strong glue. I mean, with this stuff, when you put it on, it's permanent. So you have to make sure you plan everything accordingly, because once you glue it on, it's not coming back off. In fact, I've used this cheek riser and this CTR stock now for a few months, and it hasn't come off at all. I mean, it's on there. It's not coming off. But these risers are only $20, so I can make multiples of it. And in fact, that's what I'm doing. I'm making a second one, because this one just happens to not be tall enough. If you were making just like this with one layer, it's pretty simple. You take your piece of paper to make a pattern, you lay it over the top, and make sure it doesn't move around, and then just rub your finger around the edges, all these sharp edges of this riser. And what you do is it basically makes an impression. Then you could take that off, and then all you need to do is trace it with a Sharpie, and it gives you a nice pattern. Now in this case, if I was doing just one layer of this mouse pad, I could make it with just the pattern, cut out that pattern, lay it on the mouse pad, trace it out, then cut that with a pair of scissors. But since I'm doing a second layer, I'm going to need to make a pattern that will account for the fact that the second piece is on there. Because like I said, this one I'm adding a second layer to make it just a little bit taller, hence why I'm making this video. So what I'm going to need to do is basically glue this piece on, come back, make a pattern, and then glue on the second piece over the top of that. So it's going to take a little work, but I think it'll turn out just as good as this one. And this one's held up perfect. So let's see how it goes. So let me show you how we glue this on in a couple steps, and then we'll come back and we'll do the rest of it. Okay, so what I've done is I basically took this piece I'm used to make the cheek adjustment just a little bit taller. Now with this, you want to make this piece so it doesn't wrap too far down the sides, because you want it to build up, not out. So I basically just took a piece, laid it over it, cut it to fit. Then I took masking tape and just masked off the riser where I don't want the glue to go, because the way this sprays is it doesn't spray like a can of spray paint. It doesn't spray in a circle, it sprays in a line. So I've just masked off where I don't want the glue to go. And because what I did with this one, I basically just masked off the entire stock, put it on there, and put the glue on. And then all I had to do is just take off the masking tape. And so basically I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Now with this particular type of with glue, you need to put it on whatever surface you're adhering it to, and then also to the other piece. It needs to be on both pieces, because this glue, you put it on, but basically these dry almost to the point where they're not even tacky anymore, and then put the two pieces together. If you try and spray one piece and then put it on, it doesn't work. So like I said, this stuff, once you put it on, it's permanent. It's not coming off. And it's also not temperature sensitive. I've used it, I use this on my ghillie. I've used it on a bunch of things. It's not temperature sensitive. It's not sensitive to a lot of things. I mean, it's pretty stout stuff, especially if you mask it off like this. Then you could spray it right up to the edges and make sure you get good contact. I'll show you how to do this. Okay, now we have it on that piece. We'll set that aside to start, actually, a little bit more. Set that aside to start drying. And then we want to do it on this piece. And the nice thing about using the masking tape is it'll prevent it from oozing out the sides, because if it does, you just take off the masking tape and it takes off that excessive glue if you put on too much and it starts coming off the sides. So I mean, you get pretty decent edges around there without it looking too sloppy. I mean, granted, this is something you're doing yourself, but it's also a very cheap project and it works fairly well. So we'll let that dry for a minute, and then we'll adhere it, and we'll come back and finish up the rest of the project. Okay, so now what I've done is I put the glue on this piece, let it dry, put the glue on the other piece I'm using to kind of build up the material, let that dry. And you can tell with this glue, like I said, once you put it on, this stuff's permanent. So what you got to do is definitely make sure it's fitting right. Windows, measure it twice, make sure you get it right. And with this stuff, once you spray it on both pieces and let them dry, you can tell they're ready to go together when the glue on each piece isn't tacky anymore. I mean, it pretty much feels dry to the touch. And then you put the piece on, and it basically takes us a few minutes of massaging it, kind of keeping pressure on it, and then it stays on. I mean, I gave that pressure for just, a few seconds, and it's pretty much on there. And then I took a piece of paper, made a pattern for the new piece. Same thing, I laid the paper over, and basically laid it like that, and then just rubbed my finger around all the edges, and it made an outline, and then I just traced it with a Sharpie. So then once that was traced, I cut that out, and then measured it again to make sure that everything fit, and trimmed the pattern again in little places that need to be kind of touched up, made sure that fit. Then you lay it on your mouse pad, trace that out, and then cut it out. And what I did is when I traced it out, I cut inside of the line, so I didn't add extra material with the width of the ink from the Sharpie, because that actually, two of those adds up, and next thing you know, you have a little bit hanging over the sides. So I traced it on and then cut inside of the line so it's a tighter fit. This is one of those things, if you have a good pair of scissors that's sharp, that helps, so it doesn't leave real ragged edges. You could probably use an X-Acto knife and lay it on something, but it's pretty easy to do with scissors. Then once I had this cut out, I went back, refit everything to make sure it all fits. It's all the right size. And now what I'll do, now I'll glue this. Same thing. It's easier to put the glue on this piece and put them together once this riser is actually on the stock. So what I did is I put this on, masked the whole thing, and then glued it. And so that's what I'll do again, so I know everything, because it's easier to put the glue on, and then you have something to hold on to while you're trying to get this piece on and get it to fit right. So that's what I'll do again. So like I said, that's, yeah, put on your pattern, set up your pattern, trace it, cut out the pattern, make sure it fits real good, trim up any pieces you need to do, then trace the pattern onto the mouse pad, cut that out, make sure that fits, trim again, once again, anything you need to, and then you're ready to glue and adhere it. So we'll go ahead and finish that up. And there you go, that's the finished product. You basically start like this. I added one more layer underneath there to make it a little taller. Like I said, I just glued the two pieces, let the glue dry for about 15 minutes, and then stuck the two pieces together. You could do is, you know, get some like rough edges. You can go back, clean them up with a real sharp razor blade. But I mean, you really don't need to. It turns out pretty good. Like I said, if you're really worried about how it looks, but I mean, this whole project probably cost me under $10 to do, and it's you know, you could build up this CTR, the CTR stock, so it's still, you know, it's still easily adjustable. This is a good texture. Your face isn't slide around, like I said previously. You could do this on any stock. I mean, it doesn't just have to be this. You could do this for anything. And to me, this looks a little bit better than, you know, duct tape and a PT mat. So, but just a good option. Figured I'd share it with you guys. Yeah. So tell me what you think. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. Like. Feel free to comment. Feel free to ask any questions. Like I said, this whole project is about $10, and I mean, it took me all of about 30 minutes to do. So it's a good option. And yeah. Thanks for watching.